RV over the numbers. Go down to the green. And Kennard's going to have to go around. Kennard, go around. Kennard, go around. Kennard, go around. And my high wing here over the runway. Keep it airborne. Keep it airborne. You do not descend. Do not descend. You got a fast guy behind you. Do not descend. There you go. Keep it airborne. Keep it airborne. As soon as the guy behind you gets slowed down, I'm going to put you down. So keep it airborne. The one that just passed the white dot, make a left turn on the hard surface. All right, my high wing tail dragger, you can put it down now. You can put it down now. And Charlie Sierra, let me get you about a mile off. Let's see, Charlie Sierra, lost. There you are. Make a left-hand turn. I'll try to resequence you here on the down ones. We'll see how it looks. Short final, you're clear to land runway 9 on the white dot. Clear to land on the white dot. There you go. And the tricycle left on the hard surface and follow the pikeman. Welcome. Thanks for being part of the show. And let's see, just find somebody to follow on the final, and as you get close to the runway, if it's not going to work, we're going to send you around and then try to resequence you. Now, who else got sent around that's not back on the downwind? The Kennard?
Yeah, Kennard.
All right, Kennard, there's a Gulfstream up there that went around too. I just lost sight of him, but you're going to make kind of a left-hand turn and stay low. I think Charlie Sierra, what's your altitude?
3,200.
Okay, that'll be fine. Just maintain VFR. I don't know what else is up there above you. Probably most everybody's down here, so just make a left-hand turn. We'll try to get you back here.
Kennard's got the jet in sight.
Okay, the RB, maybe an RB10, whatever, you're on final. Keep your speed up and go all the way down to the, aim for the green dot for me. Actually, keep your speed up. There's a guy behind you. Aim for the green dot, and I'm sure that's plenty of room for you to land on runway 9. You're clear to land on runway 9. Number 2, you're going to go down to the white dot. Follow the white dot. Actually, you know what? That's 1,500 feet. You're going to land at the white dot. The spacing looks adequate here. 2 guys on final. You're kind of tight there. Keep each other in sight, and you're going to aim for the white dot. If it's not going to work, we'll come up with a plan B. We might have to send you around. The second guy behind you out there in about a 2-mile final. Are you slow enough to be able to follow that guy in front of you? You need to go around.
Yes, sir.
Well, I probably shouldn't ask that because I had about 5 guys answer me, so I should know better than that. After 35 years, you would think, right? All right, so let me see. The guy who's number 1, it's number 1. What kind of airplane is
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be chit-chatting with you.
I'm going to check out first a little bit of footage.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and welcome, Dave. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Jolly good, jolly good. And so, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for being members of the Flyer Club, and thank you very much for coming along tonight for Dave White's going for and post Brexit, partially COVID update kind of thingy. Just a couple of bits of housekeeping. I should say there are no fire alarm scheduled. No. So a couple of, basically, if you've got any questions or comments, then please feel free to make them as you go along, and then we'll come back to those at the end and ask questions and see if we can get some answers from Dave. So don't worry if your question doesn't get answered as we're going through. So we'll do that right at the end. So, Dave, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you ready to go foreign? I'm ready to go. I'll tell you what I could do with jumping in my own.
Yeah, I've been ready to go foreign for 18 months.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think when we can fly next week, there's definitely going to be some flying, clearly not some going foreign, and we might be going to Norfolk or Cornwall or Devon or something like that. But before I upset everybody in the rest of the UK, I think I'm going to put your slides up on the thing.
Right.
Make sure that bit of the technology is working.
Would do.
Which it is.
Definitely do.
I'll still be here in the background. I'm going to take myself out of this. I'm going to hand over to you, and I'll monitor the comments, and then we'll pick it up at the end. So,
brilliant.
Dave, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, everybody. Some of you know me in real life, some of you don't. Those who don't, hopefully, when we are flying again, we can remedy that. Thanks for joining me and Fly tonight to talk about flying freedoms abroad after Brexit. Once COVID restrictions are lifted across Europe, whenever that might be, we will be able to fly overseas again. But not surprisingly, quite a bit has changed since the conclusion of the Brexit transit period on the 31st of December 2020. So the purpose of tonight is to try and explain what's different. And I'll provide a link to this presentation and wider material at the end and in the comments. And I've just remembered I haven't put the slides in there yet. So give me 5 minutes after we've completed before you start looking for the slides. Okay, this brief assumes that you're at least somewhat familiar with the GA going foreign rules as they were prior to the 1st of January this year. It also assumes, generally speaking, that your license was issued in the UK. And in this short talk, I only cover the differences from before, as well as a little bit about the COVID situation for foreign travel. If you like this, if you find this chat useful, tell Ian, put something in the comments. We could possibly do some further short briefs on aspects of flying abroad for those who are not familiar with the basics or would like a more detailed refresher. So what are we going to talk about? Licensing and medicals, including the acceptable combinations of those for Europe, changes to the required personal and aircraft documentation requirements, what you need to carry with you. We are also going to talk, let me just go back a slide. We're also going to talk to the changes in border controls, which is the meaty bit, not surprisingly. A couple of wrinkles with taking permit, home-built microlight aircraft abroad, update on customs duty, and a very short piece on how the COVID travel restrictions currently affect us. That, of course, is a moving feast. And I'll summarize the key bits at the end. So we'll start with licensing and medicals, because if we don't have an acceptable combination, I'm afraid we're stuck in the UK. Licensing generally, as we're all painfully aware, is a complex subject. If you need more general information on post-Brexit licensing, so things that aren't related with going abroad, then you could do a lot worse than looking at Ed Bellamy's article in the latest Fly magazine, May 2021. And Ian's column in the same magazine actually has a useful short summary as well. So I'm going to go to a table now, and it's going to look complicated. Don't worry about it. It's for studying later, and I'll pick out the salient points as we go. This table is intended to summarize the situation on licensing and medicals as it currently stands. And the first thing to highlight is that if you previously had an EASA license, that's either a PPL or a LAPL, that was issued by the CAA, then it is now strictly known as a UK FCL license. The reason that that's important is that if your license was originally issued in the UK, despite what it may still say on the front, it is not an EASA license anymore. And we'll talk more about that shortly. Now, you will see in this table that the green boxes with ticks in are far outnumbered by the others. And that's unfortunate because as it stands, only a PPL of some flavour or an SPL, a sailplane pilot's license, which is what a LAPL S is now known as, will be accepted outside of the UK. But that's not all. If you're flying on a medical that's anything other than a Class 1 or Class 2 certificate, those won't be accepted outside of the UK either. So no LAPL medical, no personal medical declaration. Now, strictly, the situation is that you cannot use those licenses on medical types abroad unless, quote, permission has been granted by the state of the airspace in which you are flying. But it's moot because, so far as I'm aware, there are no states that have granted such permission for PMDs or LAPL medicals to be used in their airspace. So the green tick acceptable license and medical combinations do include, for example, the Channel Islands, at least for the moment and possibly longer. I have been in contact with the very helpful Channel Islands Directorate of Civil Aviation, and they say it is possible this may change at some time in the future. However, they're unable to confirm when that might be. There is one other particular area where I've been unable so far, but I'm still trying to find a definitive answer. Prior to the 1st of January, it used to be the case that holders of NPPL microlights did have a blanket exemption from France that allowed them to take their aircraft and fly them there. Many people think that that's still in existence. I personally think it probably is, but we've been unable to confirm definitively that that still applies. So that's the bad news for some. Unless you have a PPL and a Class 1 or Class 2 medical certificate, I'm afraid you're restricted to the UK. One other thing to note, as already mentioned, if your PPL currently says EASA on the front, then so far as the CAA are concerned, it has become a CAA FCL license. But foreign regulators and license checkers need to know that as well. Otherwise, they might say, well, hang on a minute. This piece of paper that you've given me says it is an EASA license, but you, Rusbeef, you are not in EASA anymore. What gives? The CAA proactively have spotted that problem, and they've made available to us this document that you can see on the screen now, CAP 2086, Confirmation of Validity. It's a single-sided A4. It says, effectively, for EASA, read CAA FCL. We agree it's still valid. It's a single-sided A4, and it should satisfy any gendarme or anybody else that chooses to stop and ask you for your documents. So I recommend you download it, print it, carry it in your license wallet. It's easy to find. Just Google CAP 2086, and I've also downloaded and put a copy in my folder of useful documents as a PDF that you'll get the link to later. Okay, quick side note. If you fly a G-Reg aircraft on a non-UK EASA license, and I know I said at the beginning this was for UK license holders, but if you happen to be a non-UK license holder, EASA license holder flying a G-Reg aircraft, then CAP 2017 is a similar document from the CAA that confirms to ramp checkers that the CAA approves you to use that license to fly G-Reg aircraft outside of the UK. Again, if that applies to you, then I suggest you download and print CAP 2017 and carry it with you. Okay, now quickly we'll talk about what changes there are to the personal and aircraft documents that you need to carry with you. The good news is that the answer to that question is not much. The changes are shown in blue on this slide. CAP 2086 we've already discussed. There are some changes to required passport expiry dates, and there are currently some things to look out for if you want to fly a permit aircraft in France. So to take the first of those, there are some specific new requirements for passports that have come into force. Firstly, you need to have at least 6 months left to run on your passport before it expires to travel out into Europe. And your passport must be less than 10 years old. Now, I think most passports are 10-year passports anyway, but don't ask me the logic of either of those two requirements. I'd have thought if it's valid, it's valid, but what would I know? Them's the rules. You might also want to consider what happens if you fall ill abroad, or God forbid, have an accident. And many of us have been used to relying on the European health insurance card, the EHIC. If you've got one of those already and it's still valid, it, again, regardless of what it says on the front, it became a GHIC, a global health insurance card, at the end of the transition period. And the good news is it will still be accepted in the EU. In fact, when your current EHIC expires, you can apply for a new GHIC, and that will also be accepted in the EU. However, the government also recommends that you consider travel health insurance, and you might find that your credit card and or your household insurance includes that cover, so it's worth checking. Right then, on to border controls. As you'd expect, leaving the EU has had some significant impact on these. And we have to start, I'm afraid, with a bit of a refresher on the different types of airport that exist. There are, and indeed there were, 3 types of airfields so far as Border Force are concerned. And you may remember the table that's sort of slightly out of focus at the bottom right-hand corner of this slide. That was included on one of the pages of the General Aviation Report, the Gars guidance material. And those 3 types of airfield are firstly a designated airport, normally the bigger ones, which have a Border Force and police presence. And those mean that inside the airport Border Force and police operating hours, you were not limited to the normal notice periods required for a GAR. You could turn up, you could fill up a GAR there, and you were good to go. The second type of airport was a certificate, is a certificate of agreement airport, which allowed you within the limits of the agreement that you could use those airports to travel outside of the UK. last year and previously, those were often used for travel to, for example, the Channel Islands, since you were not allowed to go to the Channel Islands from just anywhere, that farm strip, for example. Speaking of which, the third type of airport is what the Border Force and the police refer to as an other place. So farm strip, small airport, that sort of thing. You used to be able to, and I took advantage of this many times, as I'm sure many of you did, you used to be able to travel to and from the EU from such airstrips. The only limitation being that you inform Border Force 4 hours in advance of your return. The bad news is that the privilege of departing from and returning to a farm strip, an other place, was withdrawn from 1st of January. You may now only travel to or from a designated certificate of agreement airport. But there's good news. There is an automatic interim solution in place from Border Force for many of those strips. And by many of those strips, I mean those strips which have been used for an international movement. I don't mean communism, I mean a travel movement in the year prior to June 2020, so June last year. If the strip that you fly from had been used for a travel movement during that 12-month period, then the strip owner should have received a blanket interim, a letter from Border Force granting a blanket interim certificate agreement until the end of June next year. After June 2022, each airfield or strip that wishes to conduct international travel, and again I emphasize that's either outbound or inbound, will need its own specific certificate of agreement. However, again, good news, I've recently completed the application for that on behalf of the owner of the strip that I fly from, and I'm here to tell you it's not onerous. And not only that, Border Force have been very helpful. They will happily visit you to advise before you attack the form. There are about 15 or so questions on the form, fairly straightforward: name and address of owner, what sort of flying takes place, what businesses are on site, is anything imported, do you have facilities for Border Force to inspect baggage and people? We've got a hut, that sort of thing. They also want 3 signed copies of a simple airfield plan. So I just annotated a map from Ordnance Survey that I found on the internet. It took me less than a morning to complete. If this is of interest to you, you might want to check with your airfield or strip owner they're aware of it. Certainly the owner of my strip had the letter and was happy to have somebody else do the donkey work of dealing with Border Force and completing the application for him to sign as the airfield owner. So just to summarize, the other aspects of departing and arriving once that certificate of agreement is understood and in place. In practice, nothing else has changed. You still need to give notice inbound. You don't need to give notice outbound to the EU, although you do have to depart from the certificate of agreement airfield now. So far as the EU is concerned, at the other end, you must still enter from and depart from, back to the UK, a customs and immigration airport, and they are still likely to require notice period themselves in both directions. I don't know about you, I found it actually quite easy to forget the notice period from the departure airfield in Europe when returning to the UK from deeper in France or Germany. But often, such as with Calais, you can provide that notice online. So what I've tended to do is to prepare an email in advance, and just once I know how the timings are going, I'll fill in the times and send it once I know that when I'm going to arrive at, say, Calais, Le Touquet, wherever. And that means I'm not sat on the ground waiting for the period to expire if customs aren't present. The other thing to note is there is no difference to, or no changes for travel to and from the common travel area. That is the Isle of Man, Channel Islands, Northern Ireland, and ERA, Republic of Ireland. They all remain covered, I'm afraid, by the Prevention of Terrorism Act. And that means that even though Northern Ireland is in the UK and ERA is in the EU, special procedures apply to them and the Channel Islands and the Isle of Man. You must still give 12 hours notice either way, and you should expect to complete the destinations documentation on arrival. And actually, in this instance, there is one small change for those of us that fly from what was an other place, and it's positive. Previously, you could only fly to Alderney, for example, from a certificate of agreement or a designated airport. So from my strip, or the strip I fly from, I had to make a stop off in both directions. Now that we are a certificate of agreement airport ourselves, okay, interim for now, I can go direct, which is great. The next slide is just to let you know it exists, really. I don't expect you to read this, but it's just a reminder, if you didn't know, that there is an easy table which I produced on which to find the GAR notice periods from the particular airfields that you're going to fly from. Those notice periods have not changed. The table remains valid. You can find that at the link at the end of this brief. And as I say, the link will also be in the comments. Okay. Right. This is an area which is in flux at the moment. I'll start with a reminder of the foreign rules on permit aircraft, microlights and home builds. So simplistically, non-Part 21 aircraft in current terminology. For many years, there have been bilateral agreements in force between the UK and other European nations regarding the overflight of aircraft of that type, permit aircraft, etc. The LAA maintain a very useful list of individual countries' requirements in their tech leaflet TL 2.08, which is available from their website. Generally, these bilateral agreements are unaffected by Brexit, as they are agreements between nations via a thing called ECAC, the European Civil Aviation Conference, from many years ago, rather than through EASA or the EU. So coming out of EASA, coming out of the EU, generally speaking, hasn't made any difference. However, there is a wrinkle with France, though, due to the manner in which the bilateral agreement was worded in French law. French law does need to be changed because at the moment it refers to free access for aircraft registered in the EEA and Switzerland. We left the EEA when we left the EU, therefore the wording needs to change to cover us. The intention, driven by the CAA and DGAC, the French CAA equivalent, and I have to say actively supported by the LAA, BMAA and AOPA and probably others, is for the French to change the wording to cover the UK again. This is reportedly very well in hand, and it seems there's a very good chance this will be resolved before we can fly overseas for other COVID reasons anyway, but do check before you go. When it changes, and everybody seems sure it will, and soon, I intend to update the reference copy of these slides and ensure that it's announced via flyer and elsewhere. Okay. Right, getting close to the end now. What about customs and duty now that we're no longer in the EU? Well, the good news is we are still entitled to claim fuel duty drawback. The claimable amount was increased on the 1st of January by, curb your enthusiasm, 0.005 of a penny per litre. But the rate's pretty good anyway. It still means that the reclaimable rate will pay for most of a decent lunch on a tank of avgas and the drinks too for a tank of mogas. Jet A users, not quite so good, they can buy the table water. A negative thing to watch out for now, though, is the duty-free allowance on non-fags and booze items, if that's your thing. On a private flight, the allowable rate is less than applies on the ferries, the Channel Tunnel, and commercial air travel. You should declare anything worth more than £270 per person that you're bringing back into the country. So careful with that sexy avionics suite that you're planning to buy at Aero Friedrichshafen. Alcohol and tobacco limits, they're the same as if you were returning via commercial surface or air transport. And they've changed post-Brexit too, but I haven't put them on the slide here because they're easily available elsewhere. They're not specifically a GA thing. And the other thing to watch out for, and you may have seen in the media that long-distance lorry drivers and the like have fallen foul of this already, no meat or dairy products may be imported into the EU from outside, including the UK. So be sure to eat that ham and cheese sandwich as you are over the channel before you arrive at Cherbourg. Fortunately for we gastro Brits, it does remain legal to bring food items from Europe back into the UK. Right. Short word on COVID. Hopefully this next slide will fall into disuse and a horrible memory before long, but today's news of £5,000 fines for non-essential foreign travel and the new lockdown measures that are being reported in France and Germany and elsewhere due to their third wave, it may still be a while. I've left this one to the end because unfortunately all of the rest of the slides are somewhat moot until we can fly because of COVID, but at least we'll know what to do when we get there. So as GA pilots and PACs, we are subject to exactly the same international travel rules as commercial passengers. That means we must currently ensure we take a test and show ourselves to be negative before we start to travel. It means we must complete a passenger locator form. Again, you can find passenger locator form with a simple Google on the gov.uk website. It's an online form, fairly straightforward. Self-isolate for 10 days on arrival and test twice whilst we are self-isolating. Those are the UK rules. Watch out for the rules at your destination. It would be a shame to be legally able to travel outbound from the UK and then get stuck for 10 days in Europe once you get there. So do watch out for those rules. And again, returning back to the UK, there are particular rules if we've been to a red list country. As of today, in fact, as of last Friday, there are no longer any red list countries in Europe because Portugal was removed, which is the only one. But depending on what happens with the third wave, other countries may go back onto the red list, and that has been hinted at by the government, only hinted at in recent days. It does get tougher. If you return from a red list country without going through one of the approved airports and following the rules, £10,000 fines apply. I'd suggest, therefore, sadly, but fairly obviously, that international travel is off the table until the rules change. But because it's fluid, I thought it worth giving you an update on the rules so you can make, so you know the information in order to make up your own minds as things do develop. Okay, right, summary then. Going back on what we've spoken about over all of the slides, start with combination. If you have any combination other than a PPL or sailplane pilot's license and a class 1 or class 2 medical certificate, then I'm afraid you're not welcome as a GA pilot in Europe. You can no longer depart from or return to a farm strip or other small airfield unless it has a certificate of agreement with Border Force. But as I say, many airstrips will be covered by the blanket interim certificate until June 2022. So check with your strip operator. They will make sure they know that they will need a specific certificate of agreement after the 30th of June next year, and also let them know that it's not a challenging application. You may wish to encourage your airfield operator to apply if they haven't already. Passports, validity periods are important now. You need to know that. Permit microlight home-built aircraft. Keep an eye on what's happening with France, and we will, I will, and via flyer let you know what is happening as soon as we know. Duty free. Watch out for that £270 per person limit. It's not a lot of money, £270 these days, is it? And don't take meat or dairy out of the UK, but you're all right bringing it back. All right. This slide pack and much more, including the underlying basic information on flying abroad, is available from the link on your screen, which we'll also put in the comments so it's clickable. If you enjoyed this, if you thought this was in any way helpful and you would find it useful for me to give other chats about flying yourself abroad, do let Ian know, put something in the comments. If you didn't find it useful, if you thought I've missed something, if you've got any questions, put those in the comments and we'll see what we can do. So back to Ian now. I'll take questions. If I can't answer them immediately, sorry, Ian, if I can't answer them immediately, we'll try and answer the advert and questions in the comments in the next day or so.
Thanks very much, Dave. Very useful. I'm going to leave you for a couple of minutes to figure out how you're going to spend your 5/1000ths of a penny per litre. While I just rattle through a couple of comments here. There was one that I could answer. If I can find it, I can put it on screen. That was Matt Lanham. Just put a question. Would love a future video on the basics of going abroad. I'm sure we can organise that one way or another. Might even go abroad and make a video while we do it. So that'll be a justifiable work expense or something there. So that was Matt's question. Your rest was short-lived because I've got a question for you here. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't think so. However, the BMAA will probably have that information at the tip of their fingers. I don't think so. I think it was a specific agreement between the UK and France that was brokered by the BMAA themselves.
Yeah, I would say call to the BMAA office. Bunch of very helpful people, but we don't know. Okay, here's another one. This is more of a general question. So what action should you take when you have filed a Gars flight plan but diverted to another airfield place because of weather? And I guess that applies inbound and outbound.
Yeah.
I know what I'd do. But...
Well, there is an emergency telephone number for the Gars form. It's manned 24/7 because it's not just the Gars form, it's for Border Force generally. I have had cause to ring it. My own stupid fault. I'd forgotten time differences, and I was going to come back to Compton Abbas, and Compton Abbas had closed. So the reason for my call to Border Force was to ask them abjectly for permission to come back to the farm strip rather than to come back to the certificate of agreement airfield. They were very helpful, and in fact on that instance, but they made it very clear it was a one-off, that would be acceptable to them. But that's what you should do, is to ring that Gars emergency telephone number.
Yeah, I think I would just say that it's happened to me. It's happened to me in France. France were a little bit less flexible about that, and I ended up kind of negotiating with whoever the SIV flight information service controller was, from finding another customs airfield and landed there. I mean, that said, two things. In the old days when I only ever flew anywhere VFR, if the weather looked like it might be marginal, I made a point of clearing customs as soon as I could in France, so I just didn't have that headache and I didn't have to worry. So I'd drop into the 2K or Calais or wherever, clear customs, and then became free of that. And then the second point is, if the weather's really bad, if there's a problem, then, frankly, and this might not be official advice, but as far as I'm concerned, all of the other stuff goes out the window and you just do what's safe first and sort out the rest when you're on the ground.
Yeah.
So
and I've done that going into France once. I've been unable to get into my cleared airfield. I decided that I was going to continue into France rather than to come back, because actually the weather behind me wasn't great, and I did exactly that, and made it as obvious to the French customs and immigration people as I could, as soon as I could, what I'd done.
Okay, question from Tom McCormack. What are the? I'm not quite sure what that means. What are the COVID rules for common travel area, or e.g. Alderney?
Now, there has been quite a bit. No, not quite a bit. There has been one or two things about this in the Flyer forum recently. I think that the COVID rules for the common travel area today are that you cannot travel from the UK to the Channel Islands at the moment. In fact, I think they've only just relaxed the rules for inter-island travel. It's a movable feast. It's changing quite fast. I think I would recommend that you probably look at the States of Jersey or Guernsey, Alderney websites, government websites, and just see what the current status is today.
Jersey changed, or Jersey announced their way out, I think, on last Friday. And it was streamed live on their Facebook page at 4 p.m. I must admit I didn't watch it, but if you go to States of Jersey Facebook page, that might well be archived there. They were announcing their way out of it. But I know there's a whole bunch of stuff about PCR tests and waiting to get their stuff. There's a whole load of people saying thank you to you here, and brilliant, but I'll leave those just in case I have to zoom out or something for a while. Thanks very much. Thanks, Dave. Great session. Would find future presentation on the basics very helpful. Yep, we'll get that organised for you. Is there a list of current designated and C of A airports? No.
Well, there isn't for the strips that have got a blanket interim C of A. I don't believe. I mean, Border Force will hold one, but I'm not aware of one that's been officially published. For the other designated and C of A airfields, I don't think any of the ones that are on the GAR guidance form have changed, although whilst that GAR guidance form is supposed to be up to date, it does have airfields on it like Plymouth that closed many, many years ago.
So there you go. I think this is more of a comment. If LAP will license and medical not approved, this is likely to affect a large number of microlight, LSA, and permit aircraft. Yep.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. It's a real downer, to be honest.
I think so. I mean, I'm kind of hoping that once the politics are done and dusted and sort of fading into memory, that the DGAC, EAS, the CA, everyone will just get together and quietly sort things out. But until then,
I mean, logically speaking, you'd think it should, but when have logic and politics ever gone hand in hand?
Yeah, so Dave James says Lapple with Class 1 or Class 2 does not now enable flying in Europe. That's correct, it doesn't. But is it anticipated to change? Superb presentation.
No news so far.
Yeah, who knows? Common sense would suggest it will change, but we all know about common sense and aviation regulation, don't we? Sadly depressing for Lapple holders. Fingers crossed there'll be an accommodation. Yep, I agree. Is there a list of French customs airfields?
Now, who was it? There was chap at Deanland who flies the Gazelle. Sorry, Carl Meek. Sorry, Carl, forgot your name for a moment there. Carl Meek at one point had a really helpful live clickable map of French customs and immigration airfields. I don't know if he still has, or if it's still maintained, but it was a really helpful resource. What I'll do is I'll try and find that in. If you could remind me, I'll try and find the link to that and put that in the comments. It may well be. In fact, I've got in my folder, which we've got a link to. I'm pretty sure there's a link. There's a document with a list of handy links in it, and I'm pretty sure that Carl's list is in one of those links.
There's and if you're on the Flyer Forum at all, go and look up a guy called Pato Walker. He seems to have an encyclopedic knowledge of various EU regulations, and there's certainly an EU, not EASA, an EU regulation which lists all of the French customs airfields in it. But it does change from time to time, and there's certainly fewer of them now than there used to be, unfortunately. Just a good comment here. We'll take that one. Head north to Scotland when allowed. Yep, suits me.
It's definitely on my list.
Mine too. Howard Gold. Remember the golden rule? Skin tin ticket in that order. Yep. We'll take that one.
That works for composite aircraft too.
Absolutely. Thanks for answering my question. What Ian described as what I did, but couldn't sort out the GR until the next day, but I stayed out of prison. That's always a result. If I buy a Fabian...
This is what I look like when I'm shrugging.
Probably. And Mark has updated us. No easing of restrictions for Guernsey in sight. And Tom was referring to the rules for leaving the UK.
Sorry,
12 hours notice, isn't it, for the common travel area?
12 hours notice, common travel area.
He was asking about COVID for leaving the UK.
Oh well, I believe it's still considered to be foreign travel because it's foreign, non-UK. So I think you're still potentially subject to that £5,000 fine if you cannot prove that you're travelling for work. I think it's work, education, and voting are the three acceptable reasons. Okay,
there's another vote here for a basic video, which I'm sure we can do. And what's this? Thanks for getting across France. Yep, that's Okay, just a quick tip. We'll do a proper video actually, but a quick tip is look on the SIA site for something called ASBE, AZBE, Alpha Zulu Bravo Alpha. It gives you a great listing for which ones are active and which ones are not. It's really not as daunting as it looks. It's like almost flying in America is easier than flying in France, but flying in France is easier than flying in the UK.
It is. It just looks very daunting with all that red. I do actually have already a set of slides which talk about that. So flying further into Europe, safety and survival, depressing, but it's it's quite an interesting subject. Well, I find it so, and everybody will when they're bobbing around in the briny. But that and the basics are the three particular areas which I've got in mind of being able to deliver to anybody who's interested.
Absolutely. So there's this is the DGAC list, ends with 74 Barbary. I can't see the DGAC list link there, but maybe that'll pop up in the comments. Alan's reminded people you can use the weekend one-click thing in Sky Demon, which you can. The ASBA thing is also very, I mean, it's not as clear as the ASBA thing, but the ASBA thing is a great resource as well. And so let's have a look. 38 minutes in. I think we got to the end of the questions here. Has anybody got any other questions? Just to recap, we'll be, I think, given the popularity of this and the people we've had and the questions we've had, we'll be doing a bunch more. Belgium make customs easy. Ostend, Antwerp, cold plate bubblegum. Useful when traveling from the north. Yep, that's true.
Contract is a great
and there's a Stanley Johnson clause for travel. Yes. Have any of the restrictions post-Brexit affected pilots coming our way? Apart from the fact there's not really, no. Apart from the fact there's a travel ban.
No, I think the rules for us being outside of Europe that we have to comply with returning home, they would have to comply with coming over here.
Yeah, I agree. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Dave, for putting that together and presenting. Very useful, and fingers crossed that we'll be able to actually make use of it soon. There's a little. What have we got here? Okay. Yeah, thanks very much for presenting that. That was. I'm trying to read and talk at the same time. There you go. The weekend one click, you press PTT on the mill frequency, you have to get.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. I have to say, I do like that kind of flexible use of airspace in France, where they just open it and close it, and you click on it and you get a recording, one in French, one in English. So civilized, so easy, and there's almost always an area controller giving you the stuff. Brilliant.
And error traps as well. If you make a call, you will get something. You're never left in that. Oh, I don't really know. Just a handy tip on the press to transmit on the military frequency. You will first hear a stream of French. Just wait, because as Ian says, it will repeat in English, and it's great. It's absolutely perfect.
I think the France and Germany are good examples of France, Germany, and the US are great examples of what happens when you have a joined up ATC service. I mean, nothing's perfect in the world, but they do that very, very well. Well, I'm going to call it there. Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. Don't forget it's the live stream this Thursday at 7:30. So see you there, hopefully. And let's all look forward to flying on Monday. So stay safe and thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you very much, everybody. Greetings from France. Bye.